I'll start. So I'm Nate Roberts. I'm the Director of Marketing and Public Relations at the Outer Banks Wedding Association. And today we're filming a We Do video with Rev J. Bowman and Megan, one of his brides from this year.
And I'm Ashley, President of the association. And today we also have with us Melanie, our Executive Director.
Hi, I'm Melanie Rayner, and I'm the Executive Director of the Outer Banks Wedding Association. And I'm very happy to be here.
Cool.
Yay.
Awesome.
So thank you, Jay and Megan, for doing this. Megan, huge thanks to you. I know Jay could talk all day, but huge thanks to you for joining. You want to have a little dig in there, Jay?
Yeah, just a little.
Yeah.
Just a little. So tell us, I obviously you used Rev J for your wedding. When was your wedding? Tell us a little bit about where, when, all like the big details.
Okay. So my wedding was October 11th. It was on a Sunday this year, and it was also at 9:00 in the morning. So it was a whole lot of different for everybody. But everything, I think I changed people's mind on morning weddings and beach weddings and everything in between. I mean, it was magical to say the least. And I use that word to describe it, and as well as others. Like, everybody just thought it was wonderful. You cannot beat the Outer Banks. It's just breathtaking. And everybody that was involved it just went off without a hitch, despite, all the unfortunate circumstances going on right now, and then things in my life. And yeah.
So let's hit the elephant in the room. You were a COVID bride. So
Yeah.
How did that affect your experience? Is that why you had a 9 a.m. wedding, or how was that for you?
I tried to not ignore that fact, but not let it get in the way of things. It just ended up working out, and I don't know how the stars aligned, because obviously our numbers were limited and things were restricted, but everybody kind of worked together and just worked through it the best they could. My numbers, I had invited about 110 people, but then by the time, like with COVID and it being long distance for people to travel and stuff, we ended up people bumping off the list. And then my husband and I just kind of worked together to sort of sway people one way or the other. And we were right at the number. 75 was our magic number. And it just all worked out. I can't even explain it, honestly.
Yeah.
Because, with all the stress, and you're like, well, should we cancel? There was a lot of back and forth. I mean, I remember being like a month and a half out, like, is it too late to cancel? Are we doing the right thing? And we just kept on going. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Jay was probably one of your biggest cheerleaders, just saying whatever works for you, whatever you want to do. Was there any time where he talked you off the ledge, or was like, we got this?
So from the very beginning, honestly, I was reading back through my emails, because I'm like, when did him and I originally start conversating, and just out of curiosity. So I reached out to him back in January, just because I saw his video online. It just spoke to me. And like I told him, I originally was going to have my uncle marry us. It just kind of got thrown out there, and then he was okay with it, and he was going to get ordained and all this stuff. And I just, in the back of my mind, was like, I don't feel comfortable with this. Like, something's not jiving with me. So I reached out to him, and I kind of was like, can you give me some advice? Can you, and he just answered kind of my questions through it. And then that's where he offered to co-officiate, co-lead, so that I could have him do it, like my uncle still, and then he would kind of help him out and guide him. And then by the end of it, my uncle didn't do anything.
Yeah.
I just let Jay take it. And
What's your uncle do? He did do a reading.
He did do a reading, yes. So I felt in my heart I still wanted to include him, obviously, because he was going to marry us, but yeah, he just put me at ease, and it was a no-brainer. I'm like, I need you to do the whole ceremony. And then I even added the rehearsal in there too.
Hey, talk to us about that. I've actually had I think I've had a wedding or two that's wanted to do that, and I think it's really interesting, the whole co-officiating thing.
Yeah.
So Jay, talk to us a little bit about that. How, have you done that many times in the past? Is that like a great kind of happy medium for family? So Jay, I'd love to hear your feedback on that.
Yeah, well, it can be a real good, you know, balance. I I always tell brides like Megan, hey, I'm happy to work with your uncle or Megan also had her aunt be a part of the ceremony and part of this upfront stuff, and did a great job. Uh, a lot of times, a couple will have a family or a friend be a part of the ceremony, but not necessarily co-officiate the ceremony. Although I have done that, not a lot, but probably over the years, I don't know, 7 or 8 times. And it's a little tricky because we're usually meeting each other and trying to make sure we're not stepping on each other's toes. And because I want to make sure that that person is really comfortable in their parts, et cetera. But it can definitely work. But kind of what Megan shared is kind of how it usually pans out. They say, you know what, Jay, we want so and so and so and so to do these parts if that's okay. And then, man, you just fly. You know what fits us. You know what we like. We know we've given you our input, which Megan and Matt did a great job. And then I was able just to fly with it, read them, their family, their friends that day, and we had a great morning on the beach there. Yeah.
That's awesome. Jay, let's like backpedal for just a second because we kind of dived right in, but I would love to get a little intro from you. Can you tell everyone like where you started all this, like how many years? Can we just get like a quick little background info?
Yeah, sure. The Reader's Digest version is I served in 3 great churches for about 25 years, and then semi-retired here on the Outer Banks, and have been teaming with the Outer Banks Wedding Association and others on just loving on a whole lot of couples over the years. That's been about 16 plus years. I'm not something like that. Yeah, at least 16. But and of course with you, Ashley, many, many times, and that's been a lot of fun. And so yeah, this is all I do. I get to hang out with wonderful people and celebrate people like Megan, and I get to play golf, and I get to play my wife, and that's the 3 things I do. That's pretty much. And I have I'm very, very blessed. And when Megan's coming down that aisle, it's game day for me, and it's so fun to just totally be in that moment with somebody like you, Megan, and bring my heart to that moment. I promised Megan before it even happened, and at the rehearsal, look, I'm not going to pretend to know her or love her and Matt like all of you here, but I'm bringing my heart, and I'm going to serve with heart. It's the only way I know how. So that was such a great morning. Megan, you and Matt were in it. It was amazing how it just all like unveiled, and it was great.
Like you said before about how it sounds like you don't like know these people, but you make the ceremony so tailored to them, and it makes it sound like you've known them for years. How do you do that? Like, can you talk about your process a little bit?
Sure. Real quick, the process is basically kind of in those first emails that Megan was talking about. Maybe sometimes a phone call, a Skype, or something like this. But the main tool I use is a ceremony prep form that I used over the years that Megan and Matt filled out. It gives me a lot of input. They don't come up with the ceremony. I don't expect couples to do that. It's not like in their wheelhouse usually. But they certainly know what they love and what they don't love and what fits them, because I got no agenda. I tell them, I said, look, let's build this from start to finish. So that's what I took their input, and we designed together a ceremony that honored that. And they knew when they were standing there, I'm not going to give them a curveball. I'm just going to stay true to it. And so that's pretty much how I go about it. And of course, if, you know, a couple has the opportunity to jump into town months ahead or the week ahead or whatever and have a coffee, I'm happy to do that. And that's helpful too. But the main tool is that ceremony prep form.
Megan, did you do like a in-person meeting with Jay or a phone call or anything like that before? Or were you strictly like an out-of-town bride, send in your prep form and let him run with it? Like, how much did you talk to him beforehand?
I was just going to say, can I comment on that?
Yeah.
I was out of town, but like I reached out to him many occasions, just little things I thought of, because obviously I've never done this before, and I feel like I just asked a lot of questions. People just were generally helpful, and he always was answering my questions. But yeah, as far as the ceremony prep form goes, I think that does the magic, like, because then that opens the door for him to get to know us, even though we hadn't met face to face. I think we did have one phone conversation, and my husband was on that too. And I just remember, like, we got off the phone and everything was like good. Like, he just makes it feel like you know each other. And if you don't, that's the opportunity to just kind of feel it out and see where it goes. But yeah, the ceremony prep form, I told him, he emailed that to me, and I was like, that brought tears to my eyes, because as somebody that planned their own wedding, seeing like each step and like the red notes, like what we were doing, what was different, people we were honoring, everything was just lined up, and like it just, yeah.
Yeah, that was the after you guys filled out the prep form, then I sent you a suggested order of ceremony so you could see the bullet points, the flow of things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, suggested.
That you could kind of begin to visualize. And then we had the rehearsal, and that almost always gives tons of peace of mind too. I don't know if you want to talk to the rehearsal part, Megan, but
I think that's a great thing to bring up, because I was actually just talking to someone earlier, and a rehearsal is, I think, such an optional thing. For some people, it's really not necessary, but it's nice. And for others, it's 100% like they must do it. So Megan, you said you added that on with him. What was kind of your thought process, and to help other brides in the future? Like, do you need a rehearsal? Do you not? Pros, cons?
To me, that's a no-brainer, honestly. I'm a planner. Like, that brought sanity to my life. And just knowing how wedding parties can be a lot of times, and it's just everybody's on the same page at the same time. There's no reason something should go wrong. Everybody knows what they're doing, where they're going. It just, yeah, like he said, a peace of mind for everybody. Like, my brother was saying, and my maid of honor was saying, like, so I threw in a seashell toss instead of the like traditional sand blending, or what's it called, Jay?
Just sand ceremony.
Sand ceremony. I was like, that's kind of cliche to me. We're on a beach, there's tons of sand, so I threw that in, and that was the main thing they commented on, like the fact that we could just go through something that was out of the ordinary of what people envision a ceremony doing. They were like, it was just nice to be able to physically do it, know where we're standing, what we're doing. So everything about it makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know why people honestly wouldn't.
Jay, I kind of want to, something that Megan just mentioned, doing the seashell throwing and the sand ceremony. Those are like really popular things, I think, around here, is to do something unique in the ceremony. I would love to hear some of the other ideas, Jay, that you give clients, or like some of the most unusual things. Because like at a church, a lot of times it's a unity candle. Like that's the traditional. And then we don't do that a lot here because on the beach, lighting a candle is next to impossible. So that's where the sand ceremony and the other things come in. So Jay, talk to us about some cool ideas or some other ones that you've seen.
Well, boy, I've seen a lot of things. uh, the you guys are calling it the seashell throw. Some people watching this are going, "What the heck are they doing? They're throwing seashells."
True. Maybe explain what that is.
Let me just explain that just briefly.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what most people call a shell blessing, and basically that's where everybody has a shell. Yeah, people are picturing people throwing shells like it's a food fight or something. But no, at the end of the
I
ceremony,
understood. I got it.
Yeah, okay, good.
Megan had everybody receive a shell, a seashell, and at the end, just before the presentation, I said, "Folks, you grab your shell. We're going down to the ocean's edge." And so we all went down. I explained a little bit more, but on the count of three, basically the shell blessing is everybody thinks of just a wonderful thought, a hope, a dream, a blessing for, like in that case, Matt and Megan. And on the count of three, they offered those shells to the sea. It was really cool. And then immediately, Megan and Matt, Chauvet, and there they go off. Everybody's clapping, and it was it can be really, really fun. Those two things are those two elements are two of the ones I see the most. Sometimes the wine ceremony, where a couple will take a bottle of wine in the ceremony, put it in a box along with notes to each other, lock the box, and then in a year they would open that, read their notes to each other, have the glass of wine, celebrate. I see that sometimes. Sometimes there's, as far as elements that couples would put in to a ceremony, there's honoring those that have passed on. Megan had that with a couple sentences. Sometimes couples choose to take a rose, walk down to the ocean's edge, and offer that to the sea. There's a lot of different kinds of things. I generally try to generally try to encourage people not to surprise the bride and groom with anything. It's not a day that surprises are that fun, really, to be honest. I mean, it's a day you want to have as much, just be soaking it all in. So
unless you're getting a puppy as a gift on the wedding day, that would be like the only surprise that may be acceptable. If you were to bring me a puppy, sure.
It's the only one.
Everything else, no.
But yeah, there's I can't really think of a whole lot. Sometimes couples have, like one time a couple, they're I know, Megan, you and Matt do a lot of fishing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I remember. And sometimes families have maybe a dad that passed away and was a big fisherman. They might have one time they did have a chair down by the ocean's edge with a fishing pole, and it was just and his coat on the.
I love that.
So I mean, stuff like that. Beach balls as people are walking out, the recessional. You see that sometimes, or bubbles, or. But the main thing is, man, the promise. That's the deal, and that's what Megan and Matt did that morning on the beach there in Kitty Hawk, and that's what everything should and is centered around, is that promise. Yep.
Was October 11th your original date, or was that completely new to you because of COVID?
October 11th was our original date.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Lucky.
It was meant to be.
That's awesome.
So I have a question. How did you decide that you wanted to have your wedding here on the Outer Banks? Is this the place you vacation every year? We have a lot of that sort of thing, the history of it, family tradition, all that.
Very good question. There's a lot of history. we have been vacationing there ever since I've been a baby. My mom and my dad started taking my brother, and then once I came along, and so I turned 30 this year and have been there every year since. And I remember looking at, because my planning started, I think, maybe 3 days after I got engaged, because I went in straight overwhelm. And so I raced to kind of look while we were down there at places. And so the very first and only place I looked at was actually Jeanette's Pier. And I pretty much fell in love with the view and just everything about it. So we came back home, and where did it go next? We, have the natural things like, well, are people going to want to travel long distance? His grandparents are in their 90s. So then it kind of took like, well, maybe we should kind of look around home. So within a 50-mile radius, I'll say, I looked and researched 50 venues at least around here. And I just kept coming back to the same question of, I hope I don't regret not having it where I want it, in the Outer Banks. And so I remember having a phone conversation with my dad, because I kept going back and forth. And he was kind of just like, screw what people think, like whoever loves you is going to be there, no matter where it's at. And he loved the Outer Banks. He took us there originally. And I actually suddenly lost my dad this past March, when a few months after I had got engaged. So it kind of just felt like it had to happen there because he introduced us to that beach, and we love it so much that we come back every year. And yeah.
You having it down here, I think, and it happened. You didn't have to like change your date and all of that. So that was probably him.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that was probably him.
Yep. So yeah, it was a whirlwind, and it just, like I said, it was just meant to be, everything.
So you were engaged here as well?
Yes, yeah, last year, September 30th.
Aww.
Yeah. Yep, I guess I forgot that.
Exactly a year from like your wedding, kind of, and then full circle, everything happened. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was wild. Like when I was sitting in the venue, Kitty Hawk, it was just surreal to me. It took me like at least an hour to even realize that it was my wedding, and like everything had panned out and worked out, despite, like I said, everything that happened leading up to that. So
I was just going to say, Megan had her dog be a part of the ceremony as well.
Love.
Oh yes.
Always a good idea.
Yeah.
What's her name or his name?
His name's Augie.
Augie, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's actually a great question I get from a lot of brides, because Kitty Hawk Pier, obviously you can't like have the dog in, like,
right.
They can't stay there. So where did Augie go? Like, how did you do that? I get that a lot, where people are like, well, what do I do with my dog? I want them there, but they can't stay there. So where did Augie go, and how did Augie get moved?
So that's where your planning comes in. You have to pre-plan, because everybody that's outside of planning a wedding is just kind of like, oh, it'll work out. It'll be fine. Like, we'll figure it out. I got that so much. I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, he's not just going to vanish or something. He's just going to walk himself to, yeah. So, I actually had my cousin, who was old enough to drive, be like the ring bearer, and she kind of walked him down and then circled around and then delivered him, to where he was going. A family member was living or staying close by, and just kind of went from there. So,
awesome.
But he was still a very important part.
Absolutely, everybody loved it. Yeah, I originally said that from the beginning, that I was having him in it, and everybody thought I was kidding. People love that. Their pets are they're part of their family, you know, and we don't have children, so
Why not have that be an important part of your day?
yeah.
And you arranged for Augie to come back after the ceremony. I remember we got some pictures with Augie there underneath the pier and stuff. So there's ways of making it happen, is what you're saying. Yeah,
absolutely.
So Jay, what's some advice that you maybe gave Megan or that you give other brides that like are going through the planning process and they're starting to hit that overwhelm point? Because I know Megan said that she like right off the bat went straight into like, I just got engaged, overwhelm. Oh my gosh. So, and I know you have to get a lot of that, Jay. What is some advice that you can give to them, like when they're starting to hit that panic button?
Well, panic and stress have not been a part of 2020. This hasn't happened this year. But a normal year, there might be a little bit. Actually, the first thing I tell them, and I think I've told you this before, Ashley, a lot of time. Well, when Megan told me that they were getting married at the Hilton Pier there, this comes with the package there. But I always say, look, you got to get, first thing you need to do is get a planner. It's the best money you're going to spend on anything. So I really do. I tell them all that, and that's I mean, you just don't get that day back. And to have somebody that's at the hub of the wheel, taking care and helping the bride and groom with all those, especially the bride, obviously, with all those details. Where's the pins? Where's the ribbon? Now we need this, and who's doing that? And there's nothing. That's my opinion. Is there's nothing more important than getting that in place so that you, your mom, everybody else can enjoy that day too. So, but as far as, you know, Megan was easy. She's just like fired up. I've already told her she's like a fireball, and you can tell she is. But she was fired up, ready to go, open to suggestions, had good questions. And most brides that come here, they do. They're laid back enough that they're going to embrace whatever happens, but at the same time, they're not bridezillas that they've got to control everything. So that's probably why I've kept doing it over all these, because we just don't have much of that. And just, well, you know, Ashley, and everybody here knows, we get to meet some of the most wonderful people in the whole world. Just come here and to celebrate. But the stress level, there's going to be stress no matter what. No matter if you've got the A team of all A teams, there's going to be some stress. But we just take it and move ahead. Megan said that. You know, she said there was a lot of hurdles. But we said we're just going to keep moving ahead. We're just going to keep leaning into it, and we'll find a way. It's one of my favorite sayings.
That's a great thing, leaning into it. You're right. Instead of like freaking out, backing up, you just lean into it and keep on going.
Lean in. Yep.
Can I ask a question, and Jay, to Jay and to Megan? You know, so you started out, you're going to have your uncle officiate, and then they ended up being, then it went to co-officiants, and then it was just Jay. Mm-hmm. What do you think in terms of that stress level? Like, why is it beneficial to hire a local officiant who is familiar with the area and all the ins and outs of a destination wedding? Can you maybe speak to that?
Like I said, I think it's just a no-brainer. Just based on what you said, they already, first of all, they're a professional. They know what they're doing. And also because he's from there and he's just a natural at what he does. I mean, it's just my honest opinion. And that's what had me swayed, because I just couldn't imagine letting my uncle take the wheel when he didn't really know the ins and outs. He just put me at ease from the beginning, and I just was like, just take it over, please. And it just alleviated that much more from my plate to have to try and figure out how he was going to get ordained and like in a different state. I didn't know what state rules, regulations, things like that were. So it
I
was
think that's a really, really great point, and something that comes up a lot. Truly having a professional that does that all the time and just like knows what he's doing it's just so beneficial. And obviously, Jay, like I know you feel that way too. Obviously, you're a little biased. It's what you do, but it really is. I mean, and I think it's interesting, Megan, to show that you made that progression, because I think a lot of brides do that, where when they first start thinking, they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have this family member do this and this family member is going to do that and we're going to save here and do that. And while that's wonderful, I think it's interesting to see the progression where you realize that maybe the trade-off of the versus the cost savings ends up kind of not balancing out. And it ends up going the way of like, let's make sure we're doing this right. This is our one chance. Like, let's do it right and let's not be stressed about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Megan, as a bride from Pennsylvania, not local to the Outer Banks or North Carolina, do you have any advice for other brides thinking about the Outer Banks for their wedding?
Oh, do it. That was really broad. So like, just do it.
People coming from Pennsylvania or New York, New Jersey often wonder, like, do I bring my marriage license from my state? And the answer to that's a big no for sure. It's not going to be any good here, but I don't know. I forget how, Megan, can you speak to that? Did you get it that week?
Yeah, I can elaborate on that because that was a little bit confusing for me being out of state personally. So I remember talking to you and also your website gives kind of like guidance and tips on things of that nature. So we were unaware that we had to make an appointment because I don't know if it was because of COVID, but it is at Dare County. We just kind of made it a point that was the very first thing that we needed to take care of so that our marriage was legal. And so we got in town and just headed straight there. And you just kind of go in the office and you make sure you bring your copy of your certain documents you need, and then go in, and I think it took us 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's a pretty quick process. And what you were saying is, yeah, this year couples have had to make an appointment because of the COVID thing. And, but normally you wouldn't have to do that.
Right.
But like you said, you made an appointment. It was easy peasy. You got it. You gave it to me. I did all my parts. The two witnesses of your choice that day, they did their parts, and then I filed it back to the same county where you got it. So,
right.
For those that are watching this, and it's a pretty easy process.
Yeah, and I think, Jay, you kind of just mentioned it, but that's not something necessarily that a bride might know or that everyone does. But so after like Jay officiates your wedding, he then actually takes the paperwork, gets it signed for you. Like he like makes sure the right people sign it, they need to sign, stands there and takes care of it, make sure it's done right. And then Jay actually goes and then files it with the county after your wedding. So it's just like one less step that you have to do post wedding, filing the marriage license stuff. Jay takes care of it. Like he files it off and then you get the certified copy in the mail and it's a done deal.
So I second that. Because I was like, well, is my uncle going to remember to do that? Or yeah, so it's just one less thing it's taken care of. I will give a tip on this regard though. Go back and get your official documents, because I live out of state. I had to then go back and request them. So I had to wait for them to come in the mail. I had to get two. I just got two, but for whatever you may need them for, it's useful to know that I just didn't think in my mind, like you're married and then you're on vacation. And so, yeah, I had to wait for mine to come in the mail.
Megan, thanks for like walking it through with, booking Jay and how wonderful that experience was. I mean, I think you can tell by his reviews how amazing Jay Bowman is. And it's so it's so nice to have like a bride just like want to take the time and do this for him. And it shows how much he cares because he gets brides like you that truly care back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
thanks
on it.
for doing that and like talking to Jay and talking to us and saying how wonderful the experience was. We're happy you got married here.
Oh yes, me too.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for doing this with us.
Yeah.
No problem. I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Awesome. Okay, so Jay, I want to touch back on one thing we were talking about with Megan about the legalities of who can officiate your wedding in North Carolina, what's legal, what's not legal. Can you touch on any of that for us? Because I think that is a big gray area, and it's come up a lot lately with weddings. So what can you tell us, Jay, about that?
Well, yeah, you're right. It has been a big gray area lately, and I don't want anything that I say to make it sound like I'm trying to sway away from people just going online and getting ordained somewhere and then coming and performing a wedding. But there is some gray area, and I have brides all the time tell me that when they talk to the Register of Deeds, they get mixed messages on who's legit and who's not, and that's like, you don't want to be worrying about that on your wedding day. I mean, none of us want to be worrying about that for any of our brides on their wedding day at all. So, and I haven't seen it, but I've heard of lawsuits involved in North Carolina over this, and it's like, it's messy. Now, on the other side of that, I haven't been to any weddings where Uncle Bob has performed the wedding, because I don't go to those. Obviously, I don't go to those weddings, but I've heard some stories where Uncle Bob did a great job. I mean, really great. But for every Uncle Bob that did a great job, the vast
Uncle Joe that didn't.
Yeah, it's kind of not that day that they were dreaming of, that was, like you said earlier, professionally done, and not done. Like, I never go into a wedding cocky. That's just not, that ain't going to happen. But I go in confident that I've done my homework. I know this couple. I know what they like. I know what they don't like. I know that we're going to weave their story just right. And that's coming in confident that we're going to hit a home run. It's not going to be a hope. It's going to happen. We're going to take great care of this couple. So, everything from knowing when to have people seated, when to have, when all those little nuances that I know I take for granted just because it's what I've done all my life. It's hard to expect Uncle Bob to jump into that all of a sudden and pull that off. It's expecting a lot. And I'm not trying to overstate the officiant's position on the day of the wedding, but like you said as well earlier, Ashley, you got one shot at this thing. It's not like we're gonna, let's just do this over next week. Ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. And to your point, the photos, even a professional officiant knows when to
step out,
step away, right? Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think people do take that for granted. That's a really good point. And from like another wedding vendor who sees these ceremonies, one of the worst things is when a friend or a non-professional officiant, whoever they may be, forgets to tell the audience to sit down. And you have to tell the audience to sit down because it's at a wedding, right? And so everyone at a wedding, there's formalities and they don't want to mess it up. It's someone's most important day and they don't want to screw it up for them. So the guests are not going to sit down if they haven't been told to. Right. And that is just something that a professional like Jay knows to do. Like, it is part of his ceremony. He does his, that we do the processional, he does his introduction and however he's got it formatted. But at some point he says, you may be seated. And, and if that's not said, I have had many weddings where the guests were standing the entire ceremony, or at least like 50% of it, until someone I went and tapped him on the shoulder and told him to sit, basically. that's
Yeah,
just one of the things you take for granted.
there's a lot of things like that that people in any profession that people don't think of until you're doing or in charge of or part of something. And so, like you said, Mel, like moving out of the way professionally so that you don't have somebody going yay over their shoulder while they're getting the kiss.
Yeah.
I
Or
mean,
like the head behind the two
kiss.
heads.
You don't get that shot back, and it's not, you know, or just a number of, I move out of the way when they're giving each other the ring. So it's just them, the ring, and the ocean, you know. So there's stuff like that that I always think of, like there's nuances of, like, let's say that like in Megan's wedding where Uncle Bob, or not, I think it was Uncle Rick, was doing a reading, and maybe they're videoing the ceremony, but he's not wired. So if I don't help make that happen, because I've got the video lapel, so I oftentimes go over and say, Uncle Rick, I'm just gonna stand kind of close. You share that reading that you got there. That's awesome. I'm just gonna stand so you get picked up by the video. Just otherwise, the whole video, and that part is lost.
Yeah.
So it's not like that's any, like, you know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out, but it's just a little thing that can get dropped easily.
Great point. Jay, I wanted to ask you too, you mentioned about the ceremony prep form, and like if that's how you get a lot of your information, and obviously I know you do phone calls and some chats in person, but I am constantly impressed about how well you actually know the couple's story, even though you've never met them before. Can you talk us through a little bit more on your side of things? So Megan talked about filling out the ceremony prep form and submitting that to you, but from your side of things, like how do you like make that magic go from point A to point B, where you just take what they wrote and then you like truly know their story, you know, as best you can, obviously. And like you said, it's not like you're not going to pretend that you actually do know them the same way everyone else does, and that's fine, but you do come in with your whole heart and you do know these stories well.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Do you just reread it a lot, or how do you prepare for these weddings? I'm just interested in that.
Partly because I love it, and because I really do. I love the game day when we're standing there and you were standing there and saying, okay, let's get started. Go ahead. And we, you know, the processional starts. I just recently had a ceremony like 2 weeks ago where they had their first kiss. She invited him over to watch Aladdin.
That was mine. Or I wasn't there, but that was mine.
Were you?
Shannon?
Huh?
Shannon?
Yeah, Shannon and Eric.
I remember I saw the video.
Yeah, and she invited him over to watch Aladdin. They had their first kiss during A Whole New World, the song A Whole New World. Well, at the end, I mean, it just comes to my mind, but I didn't like plan on it. But I when I was doing the presentation, I mentioned, folks, I'm pleased to present to you for the first time Shannon and Eric, and they're entering, you know, something along the whole new world, you know, and her mom or his mom came up and said, when did you, I love how you tied in, you know, and it's not like I'm not bragging by saying, I'm just saying because I love this, because I genuinely love putting all this together and looking at what fits each couple. Man, it just we just get there and we unpack it and unveil it. And I love reading the crowd and the couple. Some couples you can tell it's gonna be fun. And they're gonna be just okay with me mentioning something like that. Other couples and crowds, I go, yeah, let's just play this safe today.
Okay, so you do read the crowd and know like whether or not you can be like extra funny Jay or like more conservative Jay.
I do, and I probably that's the better way to be. Just let the wings out and fly, Jay, or tuck them in a little bit because this crowd's a little bit. It may not, and because I never go in. I honestly never go in trying to be Mr. Funny Jay. I don't, because I know that would just bomb. But I love reading the crowd, and I know how to read a moment where there will be laughter, and that's really fun for me. Because I do like when people laugh. It's good. They're having a good time.
It's not a funeral, right? I mean, I think that you should laugh at a
Yeah.
ceremony. It should tell their story, and it should be light, a little lighthearted mixed with the serious, because it's not a funeral. It's meant to be a joyous occasion, and that means laughter.
I'll tell you one of the other things that follows up the question that you had. I ask all my couples, and most of them do this, but I say, hey, if we were sitting having a beer together, and I say, why is she such a star in your eyes? Just tell me in like 3 or 4 sentences. He'd have no problem just going, well, Jay, this. I ask each couple to do that, and that, I'll tell you, it's like one of the highlights of the whole ceremony for most couples and parents and the family, because they're hearing, and I weave that into the ceremony in a way that celebrates them and agree. Not like I was there or anything like that, but I say, folks, you're going to really enjoy this. This is their words, and to hear their thoughts on each other is really fun to weave in there. I never pretend to know them or love them like everybody there. I know the professional line that just can't be crossed. But when you've done your preparation on all those kind of things we were just talking about, and then you bring your heart because you do genuinely care, dude, that's a win. That's a win. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's talk crazy. Tell me, weirdest, craziest, like, have you ever done a ceremony in a downpour? Have you ever dropped the rings? What? Tell me crazy stories. Give me some good ones, some juicy ones. I know you got them.
I do. I literally wrote a book, and I haven't published it yet, but I wrote a book of all these things because I've been journaling it. Well, just a couple. I mean, we were talking about dogs earlier. This couple had a dog that they wanted to bring the rings, and literally wanted to bring the rings, and they tied it onto the dog's collar. We barely got down to the front. It was a very small wedding. The dog is jumping around. The handler is not really doing her thing. And I said, before we do anything, I kind of whispered to him in a way, can we just check on the rings? I was worried because the dog, and it was going to be a while before the dog, gave up, coughed up the rings. They said, sure. And they said, can we, the best man went over and tried to, gone. Ooh. Gone. The rings were gone. These weren't just any rings. I'll never forget, because these were her mother's grandmother's ring, well, the diamond, and then they had it reset, and then it was his father's, who had passed away, wedding band.
Please tell me they found them.
Well, my heart went, I'm just thinking, oh my gosh. I literally said, can everybody just be still? We need to look at the ground. It felt like eternity, but the bride, it had rained the night before, so the sand was a little hard. She goes, there they are. And I mean, about 15 feet from where we're standing, both rings are sitting on top of the sand. That's impossible. That's impossible. That doesn't happen.
Thank God it rained.
They got both rings sitting right there next to each other. It was literally a miracle. So and that was one of the scariest moments ever.
Has anyone ever fainted?
Yes, never the bride or groom, but mothers. And I had a maid of honor faint one time, literally went down. I'll never forget that one. When it was her sister, and so they're tending to her sister, a bunch of people, and her sister, the bride, is standing there, and the groom, he's just going like, I don't know. And they're still standing there with me, and I said, it's okay, I'll know how to handle it, and it's going to be all right. And so, you can't go on with the ceremony while there's an ER situation here. So we could tell, she was going to be okay, but it was a little scary for a second. And the bride goes, you ever had this one happen before? you ever have this one, MJ? And I said, no, never a maid of honor. She goes, and she literally goes like this. She goes, yes.
Love a bride with a sense of humor. Most brides would just be
Right.
crying and back across the way, like not knowing what to do.
Yeah, but she was awesome. She goes, yes. I mean, I can't even, like, there's so many stories, people coming up to me and just afterwards, I'll never forget this guy. He's in his 20s, and it was a ceremony down at Nags Head Links, and he comes up, and I could tell he's approached me. I don't know what he's gonna say, but he says, I've been to a lot of weddings, but that was the effing best one ever. Well, he didn't say effing, man. He just goes at it, and I'm shaking his hand and laughing about it, because inside I'm going, well, I'm glad you just leaving it right out there, man.
Yeah. You could have been like, extremely conservative and not okay with that, but he just runs on up.
I had one quick last question. I think we touched on this in the blog we did a few weeks ago, but how has being a part of OBWA and the Outer Banks Wedding Association helped you?
Immensely. I mean, OBWA was how I even got started here. I didn't move here all those years ago to perform weddings. I thought I was semi-retired into like a whole new chapter. But I met somebody that knew of the Outer Banks Wedding Association that first year, and they said, Jay, we need somebody that knows what they're doing. It was like, this is a lot of years ago. So there were very few officiants around here at that time, 16, 17 years ago. And so I checked it out. I would not be doing what I'm doing today without OBWA. There's no way. And I'm not just, that's the bottom line truth. It's the number one best thing that I do and I'm part of. Yeah, Google, Wedding Wire, all these things they're great, but I tell all the other vendors, I said, look, you guys, this is the number one thing you can do. It's about team. It's about being a part of something that is working for you every day, even when you're not putting your 2 cents in. They're putting their 2 cents in for you because they're doing the marketing. It's just I think Megan in that interview, she said no brainer about 4 or 5 times. It is truly a no brainer. And I'm not saying that because the 3 of you are sitting there, it's the truth. It's better than it's ever been. To answer your question, Nate, it's like gold to me. And if I had to drop all the other marketing things that I do, I would do it in order to have and be a part of the team, the local team and I haven't done I haven't been on the board. I haven't done a lot of things a lot of other people have done. Hopefully I've been a part of helping promote, but it truly, it's the most valuable thing. The Outer Banks Wedding Association is the most valuable family thing that I do in what I do. It really is.
Having you as a part.
Feeling is mutual.
Yeah, we feel that way too. We're gonna literally take that and record that, Jay, and we're gonna broadcast that out to all potential new members.
Yeah.
Well, it's the truth, and I don't have to everybody knows it.
Yeah.
If they don't know it, they're clueless.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. It's a family, it's a community, and it's constantly working for you. That's exactly right. And you are a huge supporter. You always do expo, you always do a magazine ad because you do get the value of it. And you're always supporting the team and we support you back.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. I feel that. And I appreciate everything. And Nate, I don't know you as well, buddy, but I do appreciate all that you're doing and everybody there in the staff. It's huge.
Nate is a jewel.
Yeah.
I mean, he is just
Yeah, he is.
such an amazing job. These guys, I mean, I feel like we could get our own little, I don't know if TV is even a thing anymore, but I feel like we could have a show with them, They're just so
Podcast.
pretty and no, I want people to see you. Like I was looking at the screen earlier, I was like, wow, this is some good looking group here, So yeah, you guys are great.
All right, everyone, that was Rev J Bowman with Megan, and I'm Nate.
I'm Ashley.
I'm Melanie.
And thank you.
Watching.
Thanks, Jay.
Hey.
Thank you.
See you guys.